When the government fails, the problems grow. When the problems grow, the emotions increase, and radical representatives are chosen. So that's the first problem. What will this government actually get done over the next 2 years? And 2 years is a long time to do nothing. What can Kevin McCarthy do? He has no options in this situation. They have proven that they won't back down no matter what the cost. And at the end of the day, extortion is ugly, but it is also effective. The second point is this. While the Democrats can look at the Republican circus all day long, and while they can take joy in the misery that the Republicans are dealing with, and the 20 rebels as the radical extremists, Democrats should also be looking in the mirror. The Democratic Party has a wing of extremists in its own ranks. Now, it's not as large as the 20 rebels. It's not as radical as the 20 rebels. But do we have an extremist wing of so-called socialists or ultra-progressives, whatever that means? Yes, we do. It is not to the point that it threatens the function of Democratic houses in Washington. But only a fool would dismiss it. You see it growing. You see it growing in cities across the country and states across the country. You heard it loud and clear in the defund the police movement. You saw it in action in the past election, when Democrats were actually afraid to talk about crime because the far left doesn't think crime is a problem. Now, we saw it in New York, up close and personal. As a matter of fact, if the New York elections had turned out better, we wouldn't be in this situation in Washington. You would have had Democratic control. The past election was a referendum, not on who had a better crime plan in New York, but who recognized crime is actually a problem. This was at a time when New York City, some of the most liberal voters in the nation, had just elected a former police officer as mayor. You only elect a former police officer as mayor if you are concerned about the issue of crime. And still the Democrats refused to acknowledge it. This came at a time when the Democrats just the year before had gotten slaughtered because they failed to address the issue of crime. But still, in this past election, the Democrats wouldn't acknowledge the issue of crime. Despite all the evidence, the Democrats acted irrationally. Why? Because they were afraid of the far left. They saw the election was getting tighter and tighter and tighter. They knew the congressional races were in trouble. They knew the Republicans were gaining ground on the issue of crime, but still, they didn't respond. How do you explain that? The far left intimidates the moderates. The extremists are small in number, but they are very powerful. Tiny but mighty, I call them. Their threat is that they will primary elected officials who don't support their agenda. And they are powerful in primary elections. They have disproportionate power in primaries because they organize the activists to vote. You see this playing out in many cities and many state legislatures across the country. And it is growing in influence. Now, it's not yet manifested itself as a major problem in Washington, but you see the symptoms developing. In the House, you see Democrats who represent the quote-unquote socialist faction. Now, Nancy Pelosi did a magnificent job of managing them, and I believe Hakeem Jeffries will do the same. He knows them. He knows the danger that they actually pose because he's seen it in New York. The extremists on the Democratic side like to call themselves progressives. Let me say this. I am a progressive. And when they call themselves progressives, that is a misappropriation of the term. They are not progressives, as that term has come to represent the Democratic Party. Remember, this goes back. Ironically, Teddy Roosevelt was probably the first to popularize the term progressive. But FDR made it the theme of his candidacy and his administration. The key to being a progressive, by definition, is the achievement of progress. If you do not make progress, you are not a progressive. You cannot spell the word progressive without spelling progress first. To achieve progress in a diverse body, such as a legislature, you must be reasonable and you must be willing to compromise. Progressive implies a pragmatic element. It recognizes the importance of function. On the other hand, ideologues, zealots, often pride themselves on their unwillingness to compromise. They see it as a badge of honor. I wouldn't give an inch. I held my ground. Great. And you got nothing done, and you helped no one. This defies the ability to accomplish progressive achievements in a legislative body. And that is what the legislative body is all about. A legislative body represents people and from different places and different parties. So for the Democrats, enjoy the comedy that is playing out with the Republican Party right now. But this is no laughing matter. What's happening in Washington right now is not just a forecast of discord for the next 2 years. It is highly detrimental for the here and now. What does that mean? This standoff is creating paralysis for the legislative branch of government. The longer this continues, the larger the negative collateral effect grows day by day. Not having a speaker in place means Congresspeople can't be sworn in, and it threatens our national security by keeping members of Congress from actually accessing classified intelligence, which is the only way that lawmakers can make a decision. This is a dangerous situation for the country. Congress must function. Congress must function to make sure our national security is in place. Congress must function to make sure we're prepared if an emergency, God forbid, happens. Government matters. And when you don't have a Congress in place, you don't have a functioning government. So Democrats, take note. Look within and beware the extremist strain in the Democratic Party. If the next 2 years are as dysfunctional as the mayhem suggests, and if the government fails to achieve progress, the extremists on the right will increase, but the extremists on the left will increase also. Think about it. Thank you for listening.